clerk to please call the roll.
Oh, Mr. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Conwell? Ms. Galucci? Ms. Galucci is absent at the moment. Mr. Feliciano?
Here.
Ms. Richardson Scott?
Here.
Mr. Singh?
Here.
Mr. Osby? Mr. Osby is absent at the moment. Mr. Mitterholzer? Mr. Mitterholzer is absent. There is a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. I received word that Mr. Mitterholzer, his grandmother is gravely ill and going into hospice, and he's with her, so we should all include him in our thoughts and prayers. Now we'll go on to item number 3, public comment related to the agenda. Do we have anything?
Ms. Lewis signed in for public comment unrelated to the agenda.
We'll go ahead and hear her now.
Good morning, everybody. Last time I came here to tell you my observation on the public square, but there was one and a half things I didn't mention it there. If not mistaken, I remember there were more buses had to pass Superior Avenue before the construction started. So I'm wondering if some of those buses service will route it back to that location. But the other thing is we still have those concrete blocks there. And I found out for the people getting into the park area and coming out the street, some of them, because they are either still texting or they are with a roller skates. So, and plus you have pedestrians with children and elderly people to try to catch buses. So I'm not sure if those concretes should stay there for long. If they can remove them, actually, I think that will also increase the public safety for all of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the comment. We have Director Calabrese with us today. Thank you for that, along with our member, Mr. Feliciano. So hopefully RTA will take those comments back and give it a look. So thank you very much for your testimony. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 27th, 2017 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it, 5-0. It's sufficient for passage, so those minutes are approved. And no legislative matters referred to committee. And under discussion, we are greatly honored to have with us today Stephanie House, one of our state representative members of the Cuyahoga County delegation. And so we look forward to hearing your presentation regarding the state biennial budget process. Okay. Okay.
One moment, let me get my pen. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Hi. So yes, I had the wonderful privilege of running into County Councilman Miller about a week and a half ago, and he invited me and asked would I be willing to come here and talk with the committee briefly on what has transpired in the state budget as it relates to, more importantly, our transportation funding. So.
This was at our distinguished colleague Anthony Hairston's event.
Yes, so I am going to do my best. I had our staff in the House kind of do a summary of what has transpired, and then I also want to just briefly talk about there are things still lingering. So let me just go into it. So in the governor's budget, the executive's proposal, he has actually beginning July 1st, has instituted this franchise fee, which basically for health insurance corporations, the Medicaid MCOs, they pay anywhere from $26 to $56 per member month, and then the non-Medicaid plans pay between $1 to $200 member per month. And basically, this amount of money would replace the amount of money that was lost based on the federal government indicating the way that we were taxing our MCO plans. We couldn't do it that way. So the money will be done or the payments will be done in basically two different ways. One will be, actually that should say fourth quarter, not third quarter, fourth quarter payment, and I will make sure I email you the correction. And then the second part will be this formula that they came up with that really was based on the county sales tax base. And this is how you get the total of 49 million plus the 158 million. Now, we know that a lot of people, in looking at this one-time payment, people would understand that that means after the end of 2018, then there would be no more money that will go to counties as well as regional transit authorities. And a lot of people just felt like that just would not do. And so during the conference committee report, there was a plan and proposal proposed from the Cuyahoga County administrator officials. CCO, what is it? County Commissioner, County Commissioner Association of Ohio. There was another representative and a senator that put this plan together. Basically, that will request that the executive request another waiver from CMS that will allow the state to be able to charge a fee, and this fee basically would replace the money that would be currently lost, right? So the conference committee, that's what they proposed. The governor vetoed that, but then in the House of Representatives, we overrided the governor's veto, and we are currently waiting to see what the Senate will do. The Senate actually has called off their meetings, so they were actually supposed to meet tomorrow and next week, and right now those things are put on hold, and so we are not. I am not for certain what will transpire at this moment. So it's not particularly clear if the executive they will start to make an informal request with CMS to see if they will even approve the waiver. And so we are waiting to see. But where it stands now, the money of this transitional aid, they are listed in the chart here. For just the county itself, it's around $6 million. And for RTA here, it's about $5 million. The lump sum formula that will be for 2018 for the county is about 18 million, and for RTA it's about 15. That totals when you put those two amounts together, it's about 25 million for the county and about $20 million for RTA. Now, this is the money currently now that, as it stands, is in place, that is budgeted, but that's only through 2018. The biggest question is what will happen 2019 and beyond, and again, I think there are still a lot of unknowns. One of the big concerns, at least from the administration point, of why it seems that he is reluctant to even put in a request is the way that it is currently structured. The way that they are taxing or having this fee goes up to about 7.2%, and many of the waivers that CMS have been approving have been 6% or less. And currently, under this current administration, they are looking, and I guess in their current budget, they are looking to have fees actually not exceeding 5%. So it's not particularly clear at this moment what will actually happen if this request, the way it's currently structured, will even be approved. And so that's just where we are. And so I think it is what would be wise on our part to see and really try to think through, are there other options? Are there other alternatives that will enable this state specifically, and then in communities like Cuyahoga County, our transit authority, to be able to, within the parameters where it seems the current administration is going, that will provide an avenue to get the resources needed so that we will not, come 2019, have devastation, not only for county services, but also with the RTA, because as you can see, the funding that's currently being provided through our operating budget is around 9%. And that means if we lose the funding beginning in 2019, there will need to be some drastic cuts. So that's kind of the summary of it as of right now. I tried to just talk to it and not just read off this paper, but I will just stop and just open it to any questions, concerns, issues, things that I might need to consider to communicate to my colleagues.
Okay, Ms. Conwell.
Chair, to State Representative Stephanie House, I'm kind of a person that believes in an A and B plan. So what would you recommend for the county as well as RTA? We kind of know that we're going to be made whole for, and I thought those figures were greater, but we're going to be made whole in 18. Since everything is up in the air, what do you recommend that we do in the meantime to start? Because there's no guarantee at this moment that 19 and beyond that we're going to actually, that this is going to be settled, or there's going to be some. So county, I think we could do it, but in terms of RTA and why we're here and already the cuts that they have had to sustain, you know, what would you recommend to them to do, to start maybe? I mean, you know the field down there. Should they look at having a B plan, so to speak, to try to figure out where those cuts would be, just so they're not, since we're all waiting with bated breath? Or
so I think we all should have a plan B and a plan C. I'm just being very honest and realistic, based on not only just in the state, but what is happening on the federal level. And this is not something that just has come upon us. When we look at what I would refer to as a disinvestment in public transportation, this is consistently happening, and having the conversation about our different tax policies, and not necessarily having a tax policy that is complementary to making investments in public transportation. This is the result of that. One of the things is, I know even when we got the decision from the federal government that we just couldn't tax the MCOs the way it was, I was a part of a group that just asked and requested, well, why don't you just tax everybody the same thing, extending the tax? And that was something that this current administration, they chose not to do. And I think we would have been in a better position if we would have just extended the tax equitably, not just to the Medicaid population, for all insurers in here in the state. And again, the administration chose not to do that, which is based on a philosophy. And here we are in this position. But realistically, I do believe that at this particular moment, entities like the county and our regional transit authority should look for a plan B and a plan C.
We've also talked about in this committee too, because this committee will be ending by the end of this year, our primary focus on it, but we have discussed as a whole to possibly maybe continue this committee in regards to bigger stakeholders than us, to kind of try to convene and collaborate such committee, people that are impacted, like your hospitals and employers, that people need RTA, to kind of get that started and seeing if that could maybe put some pressure or at least give downstate not so much pressure, but a different outlook of how RTA impacts not just the average citizen that needs to catch the bus, but for hospitals and medical appointments and things that need to be grocers, businesses, small businesses. So what is your thought on that?
It's an economic issue.
Yeah.
This is a part of our economy. When people are not able to get to work, to have a job that is a part of your tax base, get to, their education, your different educational options. It is an economic issue, and our economy will be impacted if we do not have a strong transit authority and a strong transit system. That is real. And I think the biggest thing to know is, like, when I said this is up in limbo, we don't necessarily know because the Senate, they could either confirm or not confirm the work, the overriding of the vetoes to even put the request into the federal government. It's up in limbo. And to my understanding, they have up until December 31st of 2018 to make an action. So if we are just waiting to see, like, that'll be too late. That really will be too late. And I'm hopeful that we will have some answers well before then, but they are putting out, well, we can wait until then to make a decision. So that means that definitely conversations need to have, building our partnership with our our chamber up here, of really trying to think through how are we going to solve this problem that is going to be upon our communities within a year and a half, a little less than a year and a half, and time flies. I think it would be a wise move and a wise decision.
I knew the other day in the at the round table with Senator Brown, you stated that collectively as elected officials in whatever roles, whether it's state, federal, or local, that we should come together on the issue. And I know we kind of around the table decided that housing was a good impact on everything. But I think this could, I don't feel that it has to be a long in depth, but maybe we could kind of organize something in regards to the elected officials strongly on one letter or whatever, sending something downstate, as a collective whole, from whatever offices that we do just on this issue, because it's here before us, and housing is going to take us a while. But what is your thoughts on that?
I'll be more than happy if you would like to work on that together. I'll be more than happy to work with you to see if we can rally our public officials from the local to the federal level to really bring a highlight to really focus in on what is actually happening.
I will have Khalil reach out to you.
Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, State Representative, for your ongoing support for public transportation. I know you've been fighting for this for your tenure down there, so really appreciate that. Just in terms of kind of your opinion based on how the state budget director and the governor have essentially presented this issue, do you believe that they would be aggressive in actually trying to get this waiver approved by the federal government?
In my opinion, no.
Okay. And then one follow-up would just be, given the kind of pretty big disparity by a factor of about 26 to 28 between the administration's proposal for MCO members versus Medicaid MCO members versus non-Medicaid. Is there any indication that that is a proposal that meets federal guidelines, given it's not like we're really expanding the tax on non-Medicaid members. We're just kind of putting a nominal fee on them. Do you think, this is all obviously subjective, but do you think this is the kind of proposal that the CMS would still approve?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I mean, the one thing to note is the first time, well, I guess based on the history, the first time they tried to do it, it wasn't approved.
Right.
So that was the thing. So the first time, so I'm not, yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? I have a couple.
Yes, sir.
First, a comment, which is that Cuyahoga County, I think, is still the only county in the state that does a 2-year budget as opposed to an annual budget. So we do it the same as the state, and we particularly made our biennial period 6 months after the state's. So our next biennial budget process runs from January 1st of 2018 through the end of 2019. So if it takes a few months for this to be resolved, we can handle that. But if they say, well, we don't have to decide until the middle of next year, well, that's gonna force us into a position of having to budget without knowing what our resources will be. So we kind of need to get clarity sometime in the relatively near future. The first question that I have was to follow up on Mr. Singh's question. He asked how vigorously the administration would pursue the waiver if the veto was overridden, and you said not vigorously, and I would follow up with that question as to whether even if the veto is overridden,
It's not.
even if the veto was overridden in the Senate, would the governor have discretion to not apply for the waiver at all, or would the veto override language be binding where the administration would at least have to apply?
That is conversations. See, that's one of the things of just understanding. I think it's been since 1977 was the last time a General Assembly has actually overridden a veto. So this is kind of really unprecedented territory, where it's at least in a long while, and it has not been laid out very clearly, even with the veto. Can you make the administration do something that they don't necessarily want to do? And that's why, this conversation about having an informal ask to the federal administration has been put out there. And if informal conversations indicate that it won't be approved, then the actual formal ask won't go into place. But I think there will be a lot to be just seen. But like I said, just the tone, and the current administration has been very clear on what their stance is. And I'm not sure what are the legal or procedural steps that you take to force an administration to do something that they don't clearly want to do, and they have stated that they're not necessarily very keen on doing it.
So what you're saying is that in order for this longer-term solution, which runs through 2024, to go into effect, we would actually have to get over 3 hurdles. The first hurdle would be for the Senate to complete the override.
Yes.
And the second hurdle would be for the administration to actually make the application to CMS for the waiver.
Yes.
And the third hurdle would be for CMS to approve the waiver.
Yes.
So it looks like I've seen things more difficult than that accomplished. So I would not encourage the notion that it won't happen, but it certainly is a little bit of a hill to climb.
Right. And I think within that, I still, the power of the people is still powerful, right? So, just because an administration or an entity may not want to do something, if we can collectively all work together to have our voices being heard on every level, from our business entities, more importantly, from the actual people. This decision has impacts on real people with real jobs, with real educational opportunities, which will have an impact on our local economy, which then will impact our state economy. And I think there's a lot to be said to that. And the work that we can do to continue to express to this administration, and then starting with our Senate counterparts of actually, going back, meeting to actually work in this component to work with the decision that the House made to override the governor's veto, and then, like you said, for each hurdle, working to get through past each hurdle and allowing people to express their support for moving forward. I think we are seeing what can be done when people express themselves.
Well, on the national level, there's no question that the voice of the people has affected the healthcare debate.
Yes.
So it's out there. The other question I have is regarding the level of GRF support for public transportation, and the last I heard was that the budget bill proposed to reduce the level, that it was at 7.3 million per year in the last biennium, which was already the result of a series of significant reductions. But the last I heard that it had been reduced further to somewhere in the range of 6.5 million per year. Do you know whether that's where that ended up?
Yes, it's around $6 million. I can get the exact figure to you. And having conversations with the governor of the investment. Am I hearing? It's in my hair. The investments that should be made. I'll just hide this for a minute. In public transit, he was quick to point out that there was a $10 million increase, which was from federal dollars. It was federal money, but the state's investment, and I guess in his eyes, he believes that, well, you got an increase. Now, where it comes from, it really doesn't matter, but I do think it matters, and I do believe that we as a state need to be making more investments in public transportation. But like, again, I will go back to the belief of this administration and currently in this legislature don't necessarily see the value in putting resources to public transportation, and they have consistently, we have consistently acted on that, which I have opposed consistently.
Well, Representative House, you're surely correct on both points. In the first place, the GRF dollars are much more flexible. The federal dollars, it's difficult to use those federal dollars for other than capital expenditures, where the GRF dollars can be used for capital expenditures and operating expenditures. So there's a difference there, and the other thing is that if we don't fix this Medicaid sales tax situation, we're going to be deeply in the hole as far as public transportation funding. It's going to be a very, very significant loss. So.
And then I would just, can I add?
Yes, you
Mr.
may.
Chair? Thank you. And that's the one thing, so if everything happens the way that we see fit, the waiver goes through, we get the money. One thing to note that, it's for 6 years, and they feel like it's 6 years. And I think we really have to put together a comprehensive plan on how we are going to sustainably fund public transportation here in Cuyahoga County, and having just a real dialogue of what that looks like, what the plan will be, and really try to build a policy agenda as well as an advocacy agenda to actually getting that done. Right now, it has not happened, at least in my opinion, in a very comprehensive way, but we need to do this because depending on a different administration, different elected official, we will always go wherever the wind blows, and people's needs will be constant. And so, I really hope that I could work, with this body, among others, to really thinking through what does that policy agenda look like? What does that advocacy policy agenda look like, so that we can get the needed resources for public transportation? Because right now it's like, if it's everybody's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility, and we're not getting anything done. As you can see, the decreases are happening, and they have been very consistent. So I think having a comprehensive approach could at least start putting people in the mindset of what we need to do and a path forward. So,
along that line, Carol Caruso, who was formerly with the Greater Cleveland Partnership, has begun discussions with chambers of commerce around the state to try to engage the business community around the importance of enabling employees to have access to public transportation so that they can get to work, and she's getting some encouragement in that effort, and this could pave the way toward developing bipartisan support for a long-term dedicated funding source for public transportation. So it's a long ways off, but it's where we need to go, and that effort's underway, and we certainly need everybody to be a part of that. Any other questions or comments for Representative House? Okay, well, I would like to thank you very much for joining us and for that update. It creates a lot more clarity about the current state of ambiguity.
right, unclear situation.
Okay,
thank you.
So. Regardless of the three-step hurdle that needs to be overcome, and the fact that there needs to be Plan B and Plan C, I still think that because we know the Senate's not going to meet this week and next week, and that we have some time to work with, I think it would make sense for this committee to affirm our support for the provision that was vetoed by the governor that would provide a 6-year solution for the Medicaid sales tax, and on your desk we have a proposal, and which reads: County Council Committee of the Whole Subcommittee on Regional Transportation strongly recommends that the county vigorously advocate for the Senate to override the governor's veto of the long-term correction, and after that we should insert the word on Medicaid managed care sales tax revenue loss contained in the Health Insurance Corporation franchise fee provision of House Bill 49, the Ohio biennial budget. So, so I put that out there and see if someone would want to offer a motion that we approve that resolution. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it, and that resolution is approved. I didn't mention that some time ago Ms. Galucci joined us, so I appreciate that. Thank you. And we're going to now go on to item B, and I'd like to call upon my colleague, Ms. Conwell, to say a little bit about this. She kind of came up with this suggestion, which I think makes a whole lot of sense, knowing that that our committee is time limited and ends at the end of 2017. The question is, how do we ensure that what comes out of this committee doesn't just sit on the shelf with no action taken? So, Ms. Conwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I briefly touched on it when I was talking to State Rep House. Basically, in going through this course of this committee, and I can't remember when we started.
December last year.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, all right, Ms. Lou. And so in thinking about that and seeing where we were headed and what our limited capacity and ability to, for our voices to make change. Now, I think we've done an outstanding job as far as Cuyahoga County to get where we are today, or for the state to, and other communities as well, putting pressure on the legislators downstate to hear the voices of the people that we serve as well as they serve. And so I thought that I didn't want to see this end, as well as I'm sure the individuals that actually ride RTA, or any of us when our car breaks down and we have to use RTA, that we needed someone bigger, some more individuals that are maybe writing bigger campaign checks to the governor or whoever sits down there to, I mean, that's what's real. That's what it is. And so when you look at our community, we are so rich in cultural arts. We have big institutions that I'm sure are writing those checks and that want people to come and see their public displays of arts. We have the top medical facilities. I was in Cleveland Clinic, and that's like, if you're in that and you're having surgery, that's like a business. Inside those walls, there's surgeries going on all day long. People are coming from all over Northeast Ohio to come to our great facilities. Individuals need to take buses. You know, when they're here, their family members, they don't have the opportunity to have a car, because that means parking long term if they have a family member that's sick. Our children, most important, our young children, that school busing is not prevalent, so we use a lot of, CMSD uses a lot of schools, public transportation to get their high school students and their students to their schools. I mean, so we need all of these advocates to continue this conversation and to let the legislators downstate know how that is impacting their business or their cultural arts center or their educational programs. And so I just thought that me and Khalil and Dale would draft a list. I think Khalil's working on it already, our policy guy. And we'll write that letter and send it to him and see what the response is. And if there's no response, then of course those phones are going to be picked up to give individuals a phone call and for them to collaborate and come. They can use our building. We're more than welcome to offer them the space, but we do want that conversation to continue, because even if Plan A goes well and the Senate votes and all goes well, there's always going to be a crisis of public transportation and how it impacts our people. There's always going to be cuts.
All that Plan A does is maintain the status quo, which is inadequate.
So that's all I have to say on that. Any questions or comments related to that? I'm more than willing to hear them.
Well, I would just say that that it's just not up to Ms. Conwell and me. I would invite any of us to suggest who should be a part of a successor organization that would have the political power and the clout to have a real impact. So I put that out there for discussion.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Chair, I mean, it goes without saying GCP has to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you can't think of any right now, please forward them to Khalil.
Well, I just wrote out a very quick list of what came to my mind, and I'll just read that off for people to think about it. I have RTA, the Transit Union, the Gun Foundation, the Cleveland Foundation, Clevelanders for Public Transit, County Planning, NOACA, the County Executive, the Mayor of Cleveland, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, somebody relating to economic development organizations, state legislators, and hospitals. So that's a start. So that's something that I would. Our next meeting is not until September. It's September 12th, I believe. So we're going to have a little bit of a summer break, but I would encourage people not to use it totally as a break and give thought to this. Ms. Galucci.
I would suggest that you also think of including on that list some of the more culturally or entertainment focused organizations like the sports organization, the Cavs, the Indians, the Browns. I mean, public transit is a major component of getting individuals to those games and out of those games, as well as to work there. Sure. As well as the Cleveland Museum of Art, or maybe a representative of those institutions, Playhouse Square, a number of the things that make us very unique to this to this state and even to the country.
Well, that's a great suggestion, and one thing that's both an opportunity and a challenge for Greater Cleveland is that we have world-class assets both on sports and arts and culture, but we're now only a medium-sized city, and it makes us unique, but it's also a challenge to maintain that, and good public transportation is certainly a part of the solution to how we enable ourselves to continue to do that. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think the list is a great start. I would also encourage us to consider folks in community development institutions like Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, and especially the neighborhoods whose CDCs or CDCs whose neighborhoods are very transit reliant. So especially thinking about University Circle Incorporated, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Ohio City Incorporated, and Campus District all come to mind. I mean, I think every CDC and neighborhood in the city of Cleveland would be, we'd benefit, and I think they'd benefit from being at the table. But those are 4 that come to mind in terms of the CMP umbrella that are really going to be impacted by how public transit goes in the next years.
Could you give me the 4 again?
Sure. So the Downtown Cleveland Alliance, University Circle Incorporated, Ohio City Incorporated, and Campus District, I believe, Incorporated.
Okay, great. That's good. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to continue to work on that. I think it would be really great if what came out of this committee was not just a report that could collect us, but an action plan and the development of a successor organization that could help carry it out. That would be really powerful if that could happen. So, with that, we're going to move on to item C, which is the preview of the September meetings we have. By the way, we're going to the remaining meetings of the year are all on Thursdays. Which has it has the advantage of we won't have the conflicts with the council committee schedule, which led to the change in today's committee time. The council schedule is almost entirely on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. So we have 2 Thursdays in September on the 12th and the 26th. And I think some of the items that we're going to want to consider is more work on the concept of transit-oriented development. I think we're hopefully going to get a final answer from the state legislature on this Plan A and the Medicaid sales tax fix. By that time, RTA will have attended the Transit Center's program on system redesign. So we'll be interested to see if any ideas or direction came out of that. We're going to start thinking about this committee's final report, and also we're going to continue to deal with the creation of the successor organization. And with that, I know, Mr. Singh, you also had an item to bring forward, so now would be the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the responsibilities of the County Council and County Executive is to appoint a share of board members to RTA. One of the thoughts that I had for this committee would be to recommend priorities or criteria for what those board members should to help at least inform, create a more informed process of how the counties and the county executive appoint those members. So one of the criteria that is important, I know for Clevelanders for Public Transit, is that we have board members who have experience riding public transportation, if not regularly, certainly on a basis that lets them be informed about the system, know what a rider's experience looks like on a day-to-day. So, kind of along those lines, obviously for, different institutions, there's different priorities, but just for us to be able to have that discussion and then potentially recommend to County Council and the County Executive our ideas.
Okay, well, along that line, during the break, we'll have our staff put together some information on the baseline as to how it's currently being done, and then we can have some discussion on that at our next meeting. Okay. Is there any other miscellaneous business? I don't think so. So I would ask the clerk, has anybody signed in further for public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mr. Eric Johnson and Mr. Joe Calabrese.
Okay.
Greetings, Chairman Miller and Transit Board. Just a couple of points. There's a crack in the armor in this process regarding and I want to first of all take this time to thank Representative House for all her hard work for advocating for us diligently in a very hostile environment. I really appreciate her effort and the information she was able to relay to us. There is a crack in the armor with regard to this process because there's a portion of the the portion of the CMS ruling that supports the hold harmless provision. And that provision is mandating that Medicaid entities not be made whole. So there's no longer going to be a situation where just because you're a Medicaid entity, you will get all your money back. They are trying to generate winners and losers. So that is something to be considered in this process, and it might be a way in which we can possibly get this approved. It's a reach because what happened with the setup, with the current setup, it's so tiered and staggered that there's an obvious difference and preferential treatment in that process. But hopefully, with regards to looking at how this can benefit us, I'm hoping that people take a look at that, take a look at the hold harmless provisions that are outlined in the legislation regarding that, and I will send that out to you so you can have it. The next thing is, I would like us to think in bigger terms with regard to transit. We talk in millions of dollars, and we have to really start talking in billions of dollars. We have a community advantage program, roughly 13,000 to 15,000 people, with a per capita income of roughly $27,000 per person. That's over $500 million, or nearly $500 million. Imagine 100,000 people using transit per capita, incomes $27,000. They're talking about billions of dollars. I'm just talking about Northeast Ohio. When we look at this on a broader scope across the state, it becomes a multi-billion-dollar question. And it's important that we have people that advocate for us generate the framework and the vision that this is not simply a conversation about just public transit. This is a multi-billion-dollar access to work, access to services, access to education question that keeps getting pushed down the road because people don't see the value. Under Joe's leadership, RTA has been able to do some research and generate a map that shows our expenditures. We have expenditures throughout the state, millions of dollars. When you couple that with the rest of the transit organizations, once again, the numbers go up to billions. So in your advocacy, in your outreach, I want you to make sure that you generate the framework in a billion-dollar question. We have to stop talking about millions. We have to talk about billions because that's where the real number is. When we talk about the impact, workforce, using social services, using entertainment venues and dollars, we are talking about billions and billions of dollars. So I just encourage you from that standpoint to move in that direction in your conversations and advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I would appreciate if you could forward to us more detailed information about the hold harmless provision as you suggested, and we'll certainly take a look at that. And your point also raises another item that we need to look at starting in September, which is that we have not talked a whole lot about federal government advocacy, and that's where the billions are, as opposed to the millions. And so we need to look at that. Mr. Calabrese.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. I again also want to thank the committee and certainly Stephanie for your strong support. Could not have happened without you. Very important, Dale, one of your comments, I think when we started this committee, the feeling was and is by many people around the state that the current level of public transit is not sufficient for us to grow and be competitive. What we've been talking about today is getting us back to ground zero. So success here would be to get to that same level of inadequacy, but we need to get there before we can move forward. I think the advocacy issue is important. I have a long list of advocacy individuals that we reach out to, so we'd love to work with the committee if that's acceptable on looking at the list and supplementing the list of people that we communicate with. I think it's important to note that one of the strong champions of this legislation that we're talking about today was Senator Dolan, who typically is not maybe thought of as Democratic and leftward leaning. So there certainly is a business orientation there. I think we need to take advantage of that. Our board is getting more and more organized. They're having they had a couple of retreats this year to further talk about governance and again, what the qualities of good board members are. And I don't want to disagree. I think board members who use public transit is important. I think board members who can advocate and are influential in Washington and Columbus are even more important. I ride public transit. We have a lot of that. We don't have a lot of board members, quite honestly, that are advocates. When you look at other boards that the county appoints members to, there are probably many more business representatives on those boards than are on the RTA board. So I think it has to be a good balance. Again, thank you very much for all your efforts.
Okay. Has anybody else signed in?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, both members and friends, for your participation, and we will see you again on September 12th. Thank you.